In the middle of the 19th century, Japan stood still. For more than 2 centuries, the Tokugawa shoguns had ruled from their fortress in Edo, a nation closed to the outside world, sealed by its own peace. But one summer morning in 1853, the horizon changed forever. Smoke rose from the sea, and with it came a fleet that would break the silence of isolation. When Commodore Matthew Perry arrived in Edo Bay with 4 black steam-powered warships, Japan's world shuddered. To the samurai on the shore, these ships seemed like monsters of iron and smoke, symbols of an age they could not understand. The Tokugawa government, known as the Bakufu, was unprepared. For more than 200 years, Japan had lived under a policy of sakoku, isolation from the foreign world. Only the Dutch, through a tiny outpost in Nagasaki, were allowed limited trade. But now, the United States demanded Japan open its ports, by diplomacy or by cannon fire. Within a year, the Treaty of Kanagawa was signed. It was modest, opening just 2 ports for supplies and guaranteeing humane treatment for shipwrecked sailors. But it set in motion something irreversible: the collapse of the Tokugawa order. When Perry left, the court of Edo was in turmoil. For the first time, the shogun's government had made a decision that touched every domain, without the consent of the emperor in Kyoto. To the samurai, this was humiliation twice over, bowing to foreign demands and ignoring imperial authority. Over the next few years, more foreign envoys arrived, from Britain, Russia, the Netherlands, and France. Each demanded similar treaties. The shogunate could not resist, and Japan was flooded with unwanted contact, strange goods, and new ideas. The treaties were unequal. Foreigners were granted extraterritorial rights, and Japan lost control of its tariffs. To many Japanese, this was a sign of weakness and betrayal. From Kyoto to the far provinces, voices began to rise in anger. A new slogan spread through the land: "Sono Joy, revere the emperor, expel the barbarians." The man at the center of this storm was Tokugawa Ieyasu, the 13th shogun, a sickly and indecisive ruler. As foreign pressure grew, Japan itself began to fracture. Powerful clans in Satsuma, Choshu, and Tosa, long resentful of Tokugawa dominance, started to assert themselves. Behind the scenes, reformers called for modernizing Japan's military and economy. Others demanded a return to the ancient order, where the emperor ruled as divine sovereign. The Bakufu, once feared and unshakable, was now seen as old and crumbling. In 1858, the shogunate signed yet another treaty, this time with the United States consul Townsend Harris, opening more ports and allowing foreign residents. The decision enraged the court in Kyoto. Even Emperor Komei, a rare ruler who spoke publicly about national policy, declared his disapproval. The shogunate's chief minister, Ii Naosuke, ordered the arrest and execution of those who opposed the treaty, in what became known as the Ansei Purge. But this iron-fisted policy brought revenge. In 1860, on a snowy morning outside Edo Castle, Ii Naosuke was ambushed and assassinated by samurai from Mito Domain, a shocking act of terrorism that echoed across Japan. Blood had been spilled, and now the era of peace was ending. In the early 1860s, the emperor's court in Kyoto became the stage for a new kind of power struggle. Radical samurai from Choshu and other western domains began to gather there, preaching the expulsion of foreigners and the restoration of imperial rule. They were joined by fiery young warriors, ronin, masterless samurai who sought meaning in a changing age. The capital boiled with conspiracies and assassinations. Among them stood the Shinsengumi, a special police force loyal to the shogunate, patrolling the streets of Kyoto with ruthless efficiency. They became infamous, half-protectors, half-executioners, symbols of a desperate government clinging to order. But the emperor's court itself was shifting. Even as Komei disapproved of the foreigners, he began to doubt the violent extremists who claimed to serve him. In 1864, radicals from Choshu attempted to seize the imperial palace and were crushed by the combined forces of the Shogunate and the Satsuma clan. Kyoto burned, and the dream of expelling the barbarians faded in the smoke. The samurai realized that Japan could no longer fight the West with swords alone. In the midst of this chaos, one man emerged as the last hope for the shogunate: Tokugawa Yoshinobu. Born in 1837, he was adopted into the main Tokugawa line from the Mito branch, a family known for scholarship and reformist ideas. Educated, disciplined, and forward-thinking, Yoshinobu saw the need for change. When he became shogun in 1866, Japan was already divided. Foreign ships anchored in Yokohama. Samurai carried rifles and studied European tactics. The authority of the shogun had all but vanished in the provinces. Yet Yoshinobu was determined to modernize the Bakufu. He reorganized the army with French advisors, built modern arsenals, and sought to create a central government that could compete with the West. For a moment, there was hope that the shogunate could reform itself and survive, but events were moving faster than anyone could control. In the far south, the Satsuma and Choshu clans had quietly made peace with each other. Longtime rivals, they now shared a single goal: overthrowing the Tokugawa. In 1866, under the mediation of the visionary samurai Sakamoto Ryōma, they formed the Sacho Alliance, a secret pact to unite their military forces and restore the emperor to power. It was the beginning of the end. As Yoshinobu tried to modernize, his enemies gathered in Kyoto, gaining influence over the court. When Emperor Komei died in 1867, his young son, Mutsuhito, later Emperor Meiji, ascended the throne. The reformers saw their chance. They persuaded the new court to demand that Yoshinobu surrender all governing power to the emperor. To the astonishment of his retainers, Yoshinobu agreed. On November 9, 1867, he formally returned political authority to the throne, an act known as the Taisei Hokan, the restoration of imperial government. It was an act of surrender, but also of vision. Yoshinobu hoped that by stepping down peacefully, he could preserve the Tokugawa family's honor and help Japan unite under the emperor's leadership. But history rarely moves so gently. Yoshinobu's resignation did not end the struggle. The Satsuma and Choshu leaders wanted not compromise but complete control. In early 1868, their forces seized Kyoto and declared the abolition of the shogunate. The Boshin War had begun. Though Yoshinobu had hoped for peace, he was drawn into civil war, the final battle of the samurai age. But that story belongs to another chapter, the dawn of the Meiji era. Between the arrival of Perry's black ships and the surrender of Tokugawa Yoshinobu, only 14 years had passed. Yet in that brief span, Japan had been transformed beyond recognition. An ancient order collapsed, the emperor's authority revived, and a nation that once feared the world began to awaken to it. The fall of the shogunate was not merely the end of a government, it was the death of an era. And from its ashes, a new Japan would rise, restless, modern, and determined to stand among the great powers of the world. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more epic battles, great empires, and untold stories from history.